Recording. Okay. All right. Tanita Neale, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for agreeing to come on. I guess the point, and we were literally just chatting about this. The point of obviously chatting to you on the podcast was that you've got well, what you would deem somewhat of an insignificant backstory, but I think it's probably very relevant to the society today, in particular health and fitness. And there's two streams to this conversation, I guess. One being your family history, and I remember when you spoke to me early on. You are making it one of your ambitions to sort of recreate your family legacy, I suppose, in terms of health, if that's the
Yeah.
best way to put it.
Yeah.
And the other one is obviously a previous relationship you've had, and the fact that you're now using the gym, health, fitness, walking your dog, all these sorts of things to, I guess, manage potential anxiety and stress and things that come off the back of that. So, do you want to take us back and give us a little bit of a insight into your family history first, and we'll sort of open up that door and then go on to the other one later on?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess a starting point, is it started with my grandparents, really. So we were never really, um, through fault of nobody, I guess, but we didn't really come from like a sporting family or a family that saw the importance around like moving your body and investing in your health. That wasn't something that was sort of drummed into us, for lack of a better word, as young kids. So it's not an environment that I was used to growing up. So um, it's not something that I sort of adapted until a little bit later, well into my adult life. But yeah, my grandparents had a nice big range of health issues. My grandma, in particular, was probably the one that I had the most exposure to, and she had like high blood pressure, and she was in her early 50s too at the time,
Mm.
and had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And as a very young kid, I can remember her having, this massive stash of medications, and she used to hate taking it. And ultimately, in the end, she stopped taking it. And unfortunately, that is what cost her in the end.
Wow.
And we said goodbye to her when she was 56,
Yeah, right.
so
Way too
very
young.
young.
Yeah.
Um, and then, unfortunately, mum was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes for her 40th birthday present. So,
Oh,
um, and I remember that vividly. They told her at the time she was going through like the early stages of menopause, and it turned out to be diabetes.
oh, is that right? I thought it was menopause.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
wow.
So, not a very nice birthday present, but
No.
I've watched her over the course of the last, what's more than a decade now, just
Mm.
try and navigate through that process and what that looks like in terms of managing that and trying to keep on top of it.
Mm.
So um, I think the biggest thing that I've seen or been exposed to is everybody has a different opinion, which makes it really tricky. And I
Yeah.
think you sort of got to do a little bit of self education around it, and then sort of try and make your own decisions around what's right for you versus what isn't a good fit for you.
Yep.
Um, and then on dad's side, so we lost my dad. He was in his early 50s, and he had a very sudden heart attack, and it was completely unexpected. And yeah, so we lost him here. He was very young as well. So my exposure to health issues, and most of them, to be fair, are more lifestyle influenced, I would argue,
Okay.
has not been a good run. And I think for me, growing up and being exposed to all of that, I've been terrified of it
Mm.
myself. So um, yeah, and got to a point where, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, I was going through a process, and I was just exhausted all the time, and it didn't matter what I did, I was just exhausted, and ended up being diagnosed with the type 2 diabetes myself. So that was the turning point.
Absolutely. So your grandma and your
Yeah.
mum both had type 2. What
Yes.
you mentioned lifestyle. What sort of lifestyle did they lead that you saw or potentially now in hindsight could see causing that? Was there just no awareness around nutrition? As you mentioned, no exercise. Was it a poor diet? Did they drink? What were the sort of common denominators there?
So with My grandmother, I would say it was more nutrition based,
Okay.
or just like lack of education around nutrition, more so. And then with mum, unfortunately, she was a single mum. So growing up, it wasn't uncommon for her to have up to 3 jobs, just trying to raise 2 kids on her own and get us through school and all that sort of thing. So she didn't have a lot of spare time. And then the financial impact of that as well. So there wasn't those extra funds that she could throw away at things like gym memberships or, spending on, splurging on what they deem as good food at the
Mm.
time. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So slightly different reasonings, but yeah, very much both lifestyle factors, but slightly different reasons, I would say.
And in your mum's situation, did she, once she got the diagnosis, you mentioned obviously her navigating it for the next 10 years after, did she make any changes to her lifestyle based on recommendation, or did she, like you said, do a bit of self-education around it and try and make some changes from that?
Yeah, so mum's made some pretty significant changes.
Mm.
So she's introduced like movement into her routine, and is more aware around the choices she's making around food.
Mhm.
She does things like limits alcohol. So she definitely does make a lot of positive choices around what's going to benefit her moving forward. But
Mhm.
um, yeah, unfortunately, her condition is at a point where she's reliant on insulin.
Okay.
So it's very much a progressed point of view or
Yep.
position that she's in at the moment. So
Okay. So
yeah.
when you were diagnosed, and you mentioned that was obviously quite a turning point, what was sort of the first thought process that went through your mind, and what was the first sort of decision you made in regards to change?
Well, my initial reaction was not pretty.
Okay.
um, so the the way it was explained to me was, here's a script. You're going to need to be on this for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
And by the
right.
way, you've got type 2 diabetes. And I was mortified.
Yeah.
So to me, watching what happened to my grandmother and then watching what my mum had been through
Hmm.
and lives with every day, instantly I was like, oh my God, I've ruined my life.
Mm.
So panic stations definitely set in. And I call it stubborn. I don't know what you would call it. But I made a very distinct choice at that point
Mm.
that um, I wasn't prepared to live off medication for the
Okay.
rest of my life. So that became my why. Like I didn't want to become reliant on medication to be able to just survive and live my day to day.
Hmm.
So at the time, I had a coach that I'd worked with previously, and I'd formed a really good relationship with him over the years. And I will never forget it, but I sat in the car park of the doctor's surgery, and bless him, I don't know how he deciphered what I was trying to say. I was an absolute mess. I was in tears because I thought my life was over, and I'm like, how am I going to fix this? And um, we just started by implementing small changes. So there's definitely a perception around like diabetes, especially, that I find, where people assume, oh, you must overeat and you must eat terrible foods and all the rest of it. And my condition or situation at the time couldn't have been any further from the truth, because I wasn't eating enough, and it's taken me a long time to sort of reverse that. Um, so it started with nutrition for me. So, and then I just slowly introduced training again.
Yep.
So
Was there
yeah.
anything in your lifestyle prior to the diagnosis that, in hindsight, you identified as one of the things that caused it? Like, was there just a lack of movement, like, or was there alcohol? Was, you mentioned obviously diet, lack of, but were
Yeah.
there any other contributing factors?
My nutrition, looking back on it, was absolutely appalling.
Right.
So I would skip breakfast, skip lunch, and I would survive through my day drinking coffee.
No
So
caffeine diet.
healthy, right?
Yeah.
And then I would come home after work and I'd be starving. So I'd eat a really large portion for dinner and then I would go to bed. So there was no balanced diet. I think I calculated at the time and I was getting about 850 calories
Oh.
in the day. So,
Yeah. Okay.
and then no movement. So I'd gone from having quite an active job into my new career, and I'd become very sedentary. So I was sitting at a desk, for 10-ish hours a day.
Yep.
So, um, yeah, movement was definitely not on my radar at that point in time. And I'd put on quite a significant amount of weight in what is relatively a short time.
Did you find that frustrating because you were effectively eating, only 800 calories from the outside looking in, or if you said that to someone, they go, "What? But how do you put on weight?" Like, did that become very frustrating and confusing?
Oh, it was hugely frustrating. Like
Yep.
even when my GP at the time explained to me why I was so tired, and that being the type 2 diabetes,
Mm.
her response was, "If you just stop going through the drive-throughs, you'll be fine." And I was so angry at the time because I was like, "How dare you? Like you
Yeah,
haven't even
wow.
bothered to ask me any questions. You're just assuming." So um, but that's probably been the hardest part of the process that I've found is rewiring my brain, and even working with you, like rewiring my brain that I can eat more and that I need to eat more to get the results that I'm chasing.
Yep.
So it's very much been that's been the biggest challenge for me because growing up we were always taught to eat these teeny tiny little like minuscule piles of nothing, and that if that's what you wanted, if you wanted to be a skinny girl, um, you needed to eat less. So that's what I grew up with, and it's been really hard to change that conditioning around that thought process.
And has that taken a while? Like, would you say you're comfortable with it now, or are there still days that it tests you a little bit?
It's still like I enjoy my food. I'm not going to lie. um, but I think now that the difference for me is I make different choices around my food. So I eat a lot more now than I think I ever have, to be honest. But my food choices are very different to what they've ever been. So there's a lot more volume and variety there. But it's more for me. I find it more confronting when I plug everything into to track it ahead of time. So I always track ahead of time because then I know exactly what I'm eating.
Yep.
But yeah, when I see those calories and they're all stacking up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so much food. But then I know that that's what's required to get the results. So
A little bit of self-talk.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just ignore that number and I just eat the food, and then I'm fine.
Isn't that interesting? Like you've obviously grown up in a generation where obviously less is more when it comes to weight loss or looking quote unquote skinny as you said. So
Yeah,
it's kind of there's a similar I guess what's the word I'm looking for, a simulation between jumping on the scales and looking at that number and putting your food into MyFitnessPal or whatever the logging app is and seeing a high level of calories and immediately being on the back foot. I
yeah.
find that really fascinating. So obviously the rewiring, as you mentioned, is still a work in progress from that front.
Oh, definitely. And even just the, I guess, call it conditioning. Like in my generation in particular, I found that like growing up, you wanted to be skinny.
Yep.
Whereas now, I think more so in the last 10-ish years, I would say that transition for women, especially, I've seen a very strong transition going from we want to be skinny to we want to be strong.
Yeah.
And that's a big driving factor for me. Like I want to look good and feel good, but I want to be strong. So that's something that's really important.
So how is your health now? How are you currently sitting in terms of how you feel, energy, gym, all those sorts of things?
Yeah. So health wise, I am what they consider a perfectly healthy um, female for my age, especially. So all of my levels now. So I still go and see my GP quarterly because I'm a little bit of a stickler for numbers. So I like to see what's going on.
That's right.
So I've kept every single pathology report since this all started. So I'm a bit
Yeah,
of a
well,
nerd with it, but so all of my levels now are well below where they need to be, and they've been there consistently for the last sort of 18 months to 2 years now, which is really exciting for me, and I'm very proud of that because it's all been done naturally.
yep.
Um, but yeah, so overall energy levels are significantly higher compared to what they used to be. My sleep hygiene comes and goes, so that's something that I still work on, depending on work and other lifestyle factors, how they're going. But overall, much better.
Unreal. That's really good. So no type 2 diabetes, no nothing. It's gone for the
All
foreseeable future.
gone.
Yep.
Yeah,
And I
blood
guess
pressure's amazing. Yeah.
absolutely. So I guess the silver lining to this is that you've got control over the situation moving forward, right?
I do,
Yeah,
definitely.
which is
So
exciting.
it is, yeah. So provided that I continue with the lifestyle that I've built,
Mm.
there should be no reason for me to ever be required to be on medication, which is very exciting to me.
Absolutely. Unreal. Yeah. I think the lesson here is that you can obviously improve your health, improve your fitness, improve and overcome, obstacles like you were told by a doctor that you had to be on this medication for the rest of your life to manage diabetes, but you've proven that that isn't the case, and you can obviously reverse these things. And I think that's a testament to your character because obviously you've seen the history, so you didn't want to go down the same path as your mum and your grandmum, but you also still had to do the work as well. So that's obviously yes, it's hard, but looking back, I'm sure you went, well, it actually wasn't.
No, well, and I think it's worth touching on as well because it's something that you've mentioned and I've seen sort of fairly consistently in the content that you provide, but it's not been linear either. So it's not been this awesome trajectory where I've gone from 0 to 100 and everything's been amazing because
Yep.
there's certainly been ups and downs. And I'm not naturally a patient person, so it's taught me to be patient. um, but overall, it's been a really worthwhile process to go through, and I'm very grateful for it because it's certainly taught me a lot.
Yep.
Um, More so around how to fuel my body and how to take care of it long term. So, yeah, very rewarding.
Were there any periods through that entire journey from the diagnosis to now where you just wanted to throw in the towel and you just had had enough because there was an element of it being too hard, or did you find a way each time?
Um, well, again, I'm pretty stubborn, so if I am not seeing results, I am very quick to question why,
Okay.
particularly if I know I'm putting in the work. If
Yep.
I know I'm not putting in the work, then that's 100% on me.
Sure.
And I'm pretty good nowadays at picking it up and fixing whatever the issue might be. But yeah, overall, I think it's been a good process. It is definitely frustrating when you're doing all the work
Yep.
and you're not seeing the scales move. And I've just had to learn to separate myself from that because it's not always about the number that's on the scale. But if you jump in your jeans and your jeans are too big for you, like that's a great problem to have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good analogy because you're right, and we still are in a society where scales mean everything, or there is that stigma. So the fact that you're now, I guess, unpacking that and thinking, looking at it from a different lens is really good, and hopefully people listening to this will, relate to that because it's certainly common practice. Jump on the scales. If scales are going up, your day's shit. It's all over. That's
Yeah.
the thing, and I'm sure you had those days early on.
Oh, even now, there's plenty of days where, I think I've had a cracking week and then I jump on the scales and, they've gone up by 200 or 300 grams. And I'm like, what's going on? But it is just part of the process.
Yeah.
So,
Unreal.
yeah.
Um, so you mentioned sleep hygiene, and that's probably a good segue to the second sort of topic I wanted to talk about. And I really appreciate you diving into this because this is, it can be a sensitive issue for many people, and that is a previous relationship you had. Now, I don't know a big story about it. You've kind of sort of told me a little bit about it recently, and you had a relationship, and it's since involved DV, so domestic
Yep.
violence.
Yep.
Do you mind taking us back and just sort of elaborating on that a little bit and how you manage or have coping mechanisms for that now? Because obviously there's, I'm guessing, some trauma associated with that.
Yes. So I was in a long-term relationship. So I was with my ex-partner for 14 years.
Mm,
Um,
wow.
so unfortunately, it wasn't a very nice relationship, particularly towards the end. So um, there's there's been a lot to work through with that. So um, in terms of, well, I don't know, what would you like to know?
Well, I guess if you're, because I think recently when you checked in, you were talking about having a few nights where you couldn't sleep.
Yep.
And I don't know, I'm guessing maybe looking over your shoulder, that sort of thing. Like, did it get, and again, you don't have to answer the questions, but did it get like physically violent? Was it a case that you were fearful of, um, your life? Did we go down that path? Obviously, you've got a DV in place, so you had to get the police involved. And then how do you overcome 14 years of that? And I'm assuming it got worse as the years went on as well.
Yeah, it did, unfortunately. And it took me a very long time to realize that it wasn't a good situation.
Okay.
And I got into that relationship when I was very young. So I didn't have a lot to reference back to in terms of what was healthy, what was unhealthy.
Yep.
But definitely towards the end of that relationship, it was not a good environment at all. And it was very much a case of, and it's very prominent to talk about now, but it was definitely coercive
Yep.
control. And it did get physically violent as well. So um, the repercussions of that, unfortunately, meant that I now have gone on and off for probably, because we've been separated now for 2.5 years. And I'd gone through periods where it was affecting my sleep and my mood and just my energy levels overall, because it was a lot of stress to deal
Mhm.
with all at once, because I was dealing with, lawyers and police officers and courts and all this kind of stuff. So it was definitely a lot. And I definitely took a toll physically. But now, I guess the aftermath, and it's taken me a little while to realize just how severe it's affected me, I suppose, because I just sort of thought I could just plow on through and I'd be fine, which is not the case. So
Imagine.
um, it has gone. I've just come out of a period where it was affecting my sleep. So having regular nightmares and, being scared to leave the house and, being hyper vigilant about checking the doors locked, checking the security cameras, all that kind of thing. So um, this last period that I've just been through, I think I've briefly touched on it with you. I've decided that I just am not prepared to keep living like this, and I've sought external help to try and help me work through that, so that it's not affecting my sleep, it's not affecting my energy levels, so I can get up and do the things that I want to do and live the lifestyle that I've fought really hard to build.
Yep. Wow. Um,
Yeah.
was there, so towards the back end of that 14 years, were you getting told that there was an issue? Because I can imagine in a situation like that where you've been with someone for so long, you're probably just used to the situation and you don't see any different. Was
Yeah.
there like, were your parents intervening? Were their friends intervening and saying, "Look, you've got to do something about this," or did you just have a moment where you just went, "You know what, this has got to stop"?
It was a bit of both, to be honest.
Okay.
I think it's the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yes.
So my family was definitely very vocal about, this isn't all right. You need to do something about this. This isn't okay to be treated this way. Um, and definitely my very close circle of friends knew what was happening. And they didn't necessarily tell me what to do, but they were very supportive, and I'm very lucky to have had them. But they were definitely saying, this isn't a good position or
Mm.
environment for you to be in. So, and then one day it unfortunately escalated, and I tried to do all the right things, because I'd got to a point and I'm like, okay, well, this is really not healthy, and I'm suffering because of this. So I reached out to the police officers, and I did all the things that they tell you to do, and I had a nice big pile of evidence, unfortunately, and thought I'd do the right thing. And I went in and I explained what was happening, and I showed all my evidence, and I had, voice recordings and video recordings and screenshots of text messages and all sorts of stuff.
Mhm.
And I was turned away,
Wow.
unfortunately. So um,
On what grounds, can I ask?
they felt that, based on one conversation that I'd had recorded, that they deemed me to be the perpetrator.
They deemed you to be the perpetrator.
Yeah, because I was standing up for myself,
Wow.
saying, it's not okay to speak to me that way. I don't appreciate it. Like, that was the level of me standing up for myself at that point in time, because I didn't have a great deal of confidence. But
Mm.
that was deemed in their eyes as me being antagonistic.
Oh my God. How long ago was this? In
So this was 2.5 years ago.
Oh wow! So publicly we were talking more about DV and
Yep.
violence to women and all this sort of stuff. So it was very relevant, and yet that's their approach. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what
So
was the next step from that in terms of you getting something happening? Did you have to seek legal advice? Did you have to get security? I don't know.
I'm very fortunate to have a very loving family. And my brother had actually installed security cameras on the property
Yep.
probably 6 months prior to things really getting
Mhm.
bad. Um, and it wasn't actually for that purpose solely, but I made sure that he had access to the cameras so that if something did happen to me,
Yep.
they would at least have the evidence to say, this is what's going on, or this is what happened. We
Yep.
can see it.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, we just got to a point where, so from the time that I had approached the police and was trying to seek assistance, um, it was a matter of 2 days following me going down to the police station and explaining my story, that there was a huge incident 2 days following that, and I had removed myself from the main living areas of the house, and I ran to my bedroom, locked myself in my master bedroom, and then locked myself in my walk-in wardrobe. And because of my experience and being told that I was in the wrong at the time, I phoned my mum and I was like, I don't know what to do. And I just remember her screaming at me, like, you need to ring the police. And I'm like, well, they didn't listen to me the other
Yeah.
day. I
Wow.
don't know what to do. Like, they're not going to listen to me now.
Mm.
And I bit the bullet and I called 000. And it's probably the best thing I ever did because
Okay.
they took me seriously. So they attended the property as a high importance job.
Hmm.
And he was removed from the property for 24 hours only, just so that he could cool down.
Right.
And then from there, I had to move out of the property
Hmm.
temporarily until we went to court. And then I had to fight really hard to get him physically removed from the property legally.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Holy dooly. Okay. So,
And then,
oh,
yeah,
sorry,
so
you carry on.
following on from that process, which was a huge eye opener, I might add,
Mm.
um, and I feel like I got very fortunate with the magistrate that I had at the time. I was very, very lucky to have her because she was very no nonsense.
Okay.
But yeah, so I went through the process and had him physically removed from the house. And
Hmm.
then it was a 2-year process through family lawyers, just trying to get an agreement around, property settlements and stuff like
Oh,
that.
assets and
So
yeah, okay. Wow,
yeah,
2 years. So through that time, how did you what was your coping mechanism through that 2 years? Because there was no conclusion, there was no resolution. It was just ongoing until you obviously got to the end. But it's a long time.
it is a very long time and it
Yeah.
was very, very stressful and very expensive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but I I'd worked really hard for the home that I'd created and the life that I'd created as well. And um, I don't know, call it again stubbornness, but I wasn't prepared to go down without a bit of a fight. So
Mhm.
I had two choices. I could sit there and have a pity party and say what was me, or I could knuckle down and really apply myself to both work and my physical health. And I just controlled the things that I could.
Okay.
So I just focused on, getting up every day, going to the gym, doing what I needed to do, made sure that I was eating as well as I could.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, just really applied myself from a work perspective. And off the back of that, I managed to, retain my property, keep my home, and also had one of the best years that I've ever had in my business, which was even better.
There you go. Wow. Silver lining
Yeah.
to a pretty
Yeah.
hard situation. So do you feel that the focus on exercise, the focus on nutrition helped in terms of managing your mental health, your physical health? I can only imagine that the stress would have still been prominent throughout, but it could have been, I guess, a whole lot worse. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, definitely. I
Yeah.
think just having that routine, there was a lot of days where I was just on autopilot.
Okay.
And there were some days where I would go to gym and my workouts would be rubbish, but it was just the physically going there and I guess going
Purpose.
through the motions and being there and exposing myself to that environment that was a positive one
Yep.
that helped me redirect, all the stresses that were going on in my life.
Yep.
So there were certainly plenty of days that I didn't want to go.
Yep.
And like there were times where I'd sit on the phone to mum in the gym, like in tears because I didn't know what I was going to do
Yeah. Wow.
because there was no one to really look at and go, okay, well, this person's done it and they've come out the other side of it successfully. There was plenty of horror stories, but sort of no real blueprint to look at and say, okay, well, this is achievable. It was very much just flying by the seat of my pants and hoping that it would figure out
Yeah.
as we go. So
Wow. There you go.
yeah.
So fast forward. Those 2 years. So when did that end, approximately?
So we settled and it all finalized in February of this year.
Oh, this year. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So fast forward till now, so I can understand why there's still obviously elements of anxiety and stress that pop up from time to time. So what are your coping mechanisms now that you utilize? You mentioned obviously seeking external help.
Yep.
The things within your life, within your control, what do you do? Do you still rely on routine, on your habits? Exercise, nutrition are all staples now.
Yeah, well and truly. So they're very much habits.
Yep.
I'm also fortunate to have a very hyperactive dog. So she requires walking daily, whether I
Right.
like it or not.
Yep.
So 7 days a week we are out there walking. So yeah, so daily walks, having a really solid routine, I find is where I thrive. I'm not somebody that can just roll through the day and just see how it goes.
Yep.
So like I get up at 4:15 every day and it's the same, like rinse and repeat most days. So which can seem kind of boring, but I do tend to feel like I do a lot better with that. So
Yep. But I mean, you're basically squeezing the lemon, right? You're getting every bit out of each day because as you said, you're walking your dog, you're going to the gym, and then your job is quite demanding as well. So you're
yeah.
getting plenty out of that at the same time. And then for anyone that follows Tanita on socials, her meal preps, you see all the videos and photos of all the food, and I've had that many questions about it. So you'll have to start a separate food page or something, but obviously you're very efficient with your time, but that comes down to the fact that you are very habit and routine based, right?
Oh, very much so. And I know like there's certain things I know if I don't invest my time into, like my meal prep,
Yep.
if I don't do those like key foundational things every week, I know I'm setting myself up for failure.
Yep.
So, and that's been highlighted to me very recently. Like there was a week not too long ago where I didn't do my full meal prep.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the most rubbish week ever. Like it just felt so out of sorts.
I remember the check-in. Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. And just coming home after a long day and I'm like, oh God, like what am I going to eat?
Yeah.
Like it was just painful. So I'm very routine driven. Like I do all my meal prep on a Friday.
Why Friday? That's an interesting one because most people think like Sunday or Monday, right? So why
Yeah.
Friday? Is there a reason for that?
So I work 6 days a week typically.
Okay. You work in real estate, hey? Is
I
that right?
do,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I find that if I'm doing my meal prep on a Friday, so Friday's my, let's call it a slower day. So that's when I tend to do all of my like personal errands and things.
Okay.
So I'll usually go and do my food shop on a Friday. And then rather than double handling things, I like to just do my meal prep and then pack it away rather than putting everything into the fridge and then unpacking and fluffing around with it. But I find the weekend is where people tend to fall down the most in terms of sticking to their nutritional goals. And I am no different. So particularly on Saturdays, which is our busiest day of the week, if I'm out and I've got back-to-back meetings or open homes and things like that, if I've got my meal prep in the car with me in my little lunch bag, I stick to my nutrition like glue. So there's no excuse to go through the drive-through. There's no reason for me to go and grab a quick coffee because I've got everything I need with me. So, and then usually when we get to Sunday, I'm usually tired and I don't want to do anything.
Fair
So
enough.
my meal prep's all done and I can, invest that time into a bit of self-care or, resetting for the week.
Yep. Unreal. That's a good advice actually. That's really smart because you're right. Like Sunday, most people don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
And you're right, the weekend can really unstick people too. So that's kind of a good strategy, whether that was the intention or not. It's a good way to navigate the weekend and set your week up for very good success. I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like prior to up until maybe like 3-ish months ago, I was still doing meal prep. Like I was splitting my meal prep twice a week and it was very inefficient because I was having to do it like twice and it just felt a bit disjointed through the week because I still want my food to be fresh and taste good. So Mina actually explained to me that she does her meal prep all in one go
Mhm.
because she meal preps for her and her son
Yep.
and she freezes half of them. So as soon as she said that to me, like a little light bulb went off and I was like, oh my, of course, that's genius. So I've switched to doing the same. So I'll freeze like, half of my meal prep and then I just pull it out as I need it. And it's
Yep.
still really nice, fresh, tasty food.
There you go. Good on Mina. She's always got good advice around food, doesn't she?
She does.
Oh dear. Oh well, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot in both of those stories. I must admit, a lot that I didn't know. But I tell you what, the common denominator or the common um, I don't know, for lack of a better term, denominator that you have referenced in both instances is health and fitness, or just nutrition and exercise. Whether it's your family history and an improvement in health, you're focused on that. Whether it's overcoming your, the DV history and in getting your mental health in order, it's health and exercise. So there's a lot to be said about that, I guess. And even in regards to going back to the family history and the type 2 diagnosis and the fact that you've understood the need to knuckle down, do some hard work, have some hard days, overcome adversity in regards to, yes, it's challenging, it's going to take time. I think is really good advice for people. So I suppose in relation to either instance, do you have any, I was going to ask any sort of recommendations or advice for people out there because as I said to you before we started, I've actually had a couple of other clients who have gone through DV and still are
Yeah.
from that lens, but also from the health lens because type 2 diabetes diagnosis is ridiculously high at the moment. It's I don't know what the statistics are, but I know it's very very common.
Yeah.
Um, you're a living working case of it being reversible, for lack of a better term. So,
Yeah.
in terms of either side of those two stories that you've told, what's some advice around just simplifying the process and obviously overcoming some of those obstacles?
So in regards to the DV stuff,
Mm.
I think, and I don't know, it's very important for me, I feel, to talk about it because, like I said before, I don't think there is a lot of success stories. Unfortunately, we see a lot in the news of, people losing their lives
Yeah.
and, families being destroyed and that sort of thing. And it's a very real issue. But I think the thing for me that paid dividends in my own situation is just not taking no for an answer
Okay.
and really backing yourself. So I unfortunately didn't have the best experience with the police, the people that I thought, I could go to and they would help me.
Hmm.
Um, and in the end, I ended up self-representing in court because
Wow. Okay.
I cracked it with the lady that was supposed to be representing me because she was just getting it all wrong, and it was my life on the line. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think if I could give one piece of advice to anybody about that particular scenario, it would be to just back yourself. And if you feel like you're not being advocated for, you're your best own advocate. Like you know your story inside out.
Mhm.
And I think you always know what's right and wrong. And if you don't use your voice, you're never going to be heard. So
I like that.
don't be afraid to say something. And
Yep.
if they don't hear you the first time, say it a little louder.
Yeah. Well. So would there be,
um,
just to touch on that, would there be anything you do differently? Like when you went to the cops for the first thing, was there something in hindsight that you could have done differently to make them take you seriously quicker?
to be honest, the only thing that I regret is I'd actually gone to the police maybe like 2.5 years prior to that incident.
Oh,
Um, and was sat down by the senior constable at that time, and they weren't going to let me go home because
right.
they'd explained to me the severity of the situation. And at that point in time, I was terrified and I
Mm,
had no idea what to do, and I didn't want to get anybody into trouble. I just knew what was going on at the time was wrong, and I wish I had taken his advice, because in that instance, my experience was amazing. They were wonderful.
okay.
Um, so yeah, that would be the only thing that I would probably change.
Okay.
And then just looking out for, I guess, the smaller signs as well. Like there's so many things that happen, but they just compile, and you just let them slide, and you think,
Yep.
it's a bad day or whatever.
Sure.
But one bad day turns into 14 years of bad days, and
Yeah.
that's not a great place to be. So
Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. And the health side of things, so the family history and that, obviously, as you mentioned, well, you referenced it in the fact that when you went to court for your DV, you could have either just had a pity party or done something about it. I'm assuming that sort of decision was in your hands when you got the diagnosis too. You could have had a pity party, poor me, or you go and do something about it. So is that sort of the advice you would give someone who has had a health diagnosis, but there are options in regards to improving their health and getting better and obviously, living a long and healthy life?
oh, absolutely. Like I think the first thing I did at that point in time was I fired my GP and I went and found a new one.
Yeah.
So I just think, particularly in the health space, like I think I mentioned very early on, there's so much information out there, and it's so easy to jump on things like Instagram, and they'll tell that some people sit there and tell you bananas are bad for you, for God's sake. Like
Yeah.
there's just this overload of information, and you sort of don't know whether what you're doing is right or wrong. But in a lot of instances, you've just got to go, I guess, feel it out and figure out what works best for you, and then putting the right processes in place and finding the right people to support you in the parts that you're lacking in. So um, for me, it was really important to surround myself with people that could teach me how to train and train effectively,
Mhm.
but then also nutrition, because I had no idea.
Yep.
And I'm still learning. Like I'm such a long way from knowing everything, and I don't think you ever know any. Like you're never going to be fully across it. Um, like you still are studying
Yeah.
and have been studying up until even recently.
Yeah.
So it's never ending. But don't be afraid to ask questions. Like I don't think there's any silly questions. And I think just because you're not seeing the results straight away doesn't mean it's not working.
Mm.
So
Good advice.
my first coach actually said to me, because I again am so impatient. I think we were like a few months into like really me being very consistent with my training and nutrition, and I said to him, like, why is it taking so long? Like, this is stupid. Like, and I was getting so frustrated. And he used the analogy of the Titanic. He said, you can't turn the Titanic around in the snap of a finger. It's going to take time. Like, you need to just be patient, and slowly one day you'll start to see a small shift. And then next minute, he goes, it'll be, a year or two down the track, and next minute you're on a completely different trajectory. And he
Yeah.
was right.
There you go. Good
So,
advice.
yes.
Unreal. Wow. Okay. That's yeah, there's some there's some great advice there, but there's also some really inspiring stories to come out of what has been well, a lengthy period of time, I guess, 14 years in the relationship, but also the history of your family as well. So
Yeah.
where do you see yourself now, 5, 10 years from now, in regards to health and fitness? Like, what's the trajectory now that you have the knowledge, you've got the support, you've obviously overcome a lot. So, your mental resilience is quite high, I would imagine. So where do you see Tanita in 5 to 10 from now?
So I'm still not at my goal,
Okay, that's all
as
right.
you know.
Yes.
But yeah, so I've broken it down into mini chunks. So I've still got a little bit of work to do in terms of, like weight wise.
Mhm.
Um, and then from there, I would really just love to build my dream physique. And I think I joked with you when I initially started working with you that I would love to have like shoulders like Dana Lynn Bailey, because I think
Yes.
she's just amazing. But and I'm sure if I applied myself, I'd probably get there
You can
in a
actually look up
natural sense anyway.
some of her shoulder workouts. They're insane.
Oh,
Yeah, they're, they're
yeah,
they're painful to watch, but
they
that's
are.
the shoulders she's got, right?
Um, but yeah, so like in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, I would like to, continue. And I want this to be something that is part of my everyday for the rest of my life. So it's not something that I will ever deviate from, because there's too many benefits that come out of it for me. Um, but I would like to start a family as well. So that's another big, driving factor for me. So if I do end up being fortunate enough to have children, I would like to instill good, values around, fitness and lifestyle and what that looks like in the everyday sense and why it's so important. So for me, I feel like I'm sort of laying the foundations for that now.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great way to
Yeah.
look at it too, because not only are you chasing optimal health, but you're putting yourself into positions so should that lifestyle change happen, you're going to be in a really strong position for it to happen. I think that's really
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely amazing. Well, that was cool. Great story. Well, thank you very much for obviously diving deep into your personal life. I do appreciate it. I wasn't sure how you were going to respond when I messaged you about it the other week. But I appreciate the fact that you're really open and transparent about the story, because I'm sure there's plenty of people out there with something similar that could certainly relate. It's obviously, as you said, I can't remember the quote, but I needed to write it down. If you don't speak, you're not heard, and that's
Yeah.
probably the case a lot of the time. So thank you very much for that. Um, we'll finish up on your personality question, which I ask every guest, and that is obviously who you'd have to dinner. So you can obviously invite anyone over that you would like, whether they're alive, dead, fictional, non-fictional, could be more than one. Um, but it's to sit down, have a meal, and have a really good conversation with. Who do you think that would be?
So I would probably have two.
Yep.
And I'm not going to lie, this was a really hard question. This is probably the hardest
Most people say
question.
that too, eh?
Um, but I would have to say my family.
Right.
So, as corny as that sounds, I think Conor McGregor nailed it when he said if you wouldn't starve with them, they shouldn't be sitting at your table. So, I completely agree.
Yep.
Um, but then, if I had to pick a celebrity, I would definitely say Jamie Oliver, because
Oh
he
wow.
has, I don't know, inspired my like how I cook and how I interact
Really?
with food. And he just really loves food, and so do I. So I think that would be an awesome guest.
He would be. I love his like when he does his cooking shows. I love his just the room. I don't you wouldn't call it a kitchen because it's kind of outdoors. It's like
Yeah,
almost like a greenhouse sort of thing where he's got everything growing in the background. So I love that setup. It just looks
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah,
But you're right. Like his take on food and his ability to make food interesting is really unique, and that's obviously why he's been so successful for so long. But yeah, awesome, great choice. Would he be
yeah.
invited with your family, or would it have to be a separate dinner?
No, with my family, I reckon.
You wouldn't make him cook, though, would you?
I wouldn't say no.
Fair enough.
No, I reckon. Yeah, I remember like he had a restaurant in Brisbane there for a little while. It was
He
like a
did.
pasta restaurant, and I'm kicking myself that I never went. But
Yeah, right.
one day when I've got nothing better to do with my time, I will head over to London and check it out. But
Absolutely. No, I lived over there for 3 years and I never actually ventured down to his place. But in hindsight, I probably should have because, yeah, I think at the time though he had his restaurant here, so I think in the back of my mind I always thought, oh well, I'll just I'll stay local. But
yeah,
unfortunately, it happened.
yeah, one day.
One day, exactly. Well, thank you, Tanita. I really appreciate your time, and obviously the generosity in sharing your stories too. Hopefully, some people have been inspired, or at least have gotten a little bit of advice from someone who isn't an influencer or a celebrity or anything like that. You're just an everyday person doing their bit, but you've obviously got a great story to share and have shown that you can overcome it and used health and fitness particularly in ways to benefit and I guess progress your own space and your own health and your own life, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. So we'll wind up there. But yeah, once again, thank you. And is your Instagram page public?
My personal or
The
business?
one, no, the one where you share. Well, do you want to give your business a plug? Give your business a
Uh, yeah, well, I guess if anybody's wanting to sell their
yeah,
property,
100%. Yeah, absolutely. No, do
yeah.
it.
So I'm on the north side of Brisbane, but Tanita Neale Properties. If you would like any advice, I'd be more than happy to help.
Unreal. Cool. We can do that. But your other story where you put up all your food, is that public?
It's not, but I can make it public if you like.
Oh no, that's okay. I just thought, well, when you tag me and stuff, I'll reshare it, and then people can obviously see it anyway. So
Yeah, or
do it that way.
even on I don't know. Again, I don't think my life's that exciting, but if people have questions about my meal prep or what I do, like I'm more than happy to answer any questions. But yeah, I usually
Cool.
just try and keep it simple and to the flavor profiles that I like. So
Well, you know what? So simple is best, but sometimes people have trouble with simple. So maybe if you are listening and you have seen some of my shares of Tanita's food and the delicious nature that it looks like, but you want to ask what it is or how it's made or whatever, shoot her a DM, and or I can put you in contact with her as well. So we'll do it that way. There you go.
yeah, cool. Okay,
Cool.
sounds good.
Awesome. All right. Thank you again, Tanita. Have a great day. We will. So it is Monday, the 4th. So this will drop 2 weeks' time, 2 Mondays from now.
Cool.
So
Sounds good.
awesome. All right. Thank you very much.
Awesome. All righty. Bye.
Bye.